He's like, I wasn't telling you the truth about your mom. And he goes, now there is something I need you to tell you about your mom. That moment, as you can just imagine all the feelings.
How was your support system growing up?
I grew up in a broken home since I was one. My mom actually for a while worked at a prison. One day she had come home. She said that, this is going to be your new dad. His name is Daddy Donovan. And I would write this guy letters and I would call him Daddy Donovan and say how much I wanted to see him and meet him and love him. There was the custody battle, obviously, my dad versus my mom. And my dad was definitely losing that battle. And I kind of broke down and I was like, y'all, I'm sorry. My dad's like, what are you sorry for? I said, I hated you guys. I hated you. And my dad just, he kind of looked at me and said, well, you have nothing to be sorry for. He's like, you were just a child. How were you supposed to know the things that your mom was putting into your head? I just had to play the long game, hoping one day you would realize the truth. And he goes, now there is something I need you to tell you about your mom. Do you remember Daddy Donovan? He goes, Donovan was an inmate at the prison your mom was working at. And your mom was caught having an affair with a convict.
Welcome, everyone, to the Beyond the Cover podcast. My intent with creating this podcast was to provide a platform where men can speak openly about their journeys with mental health without fear of judgment while doing so. While I, the host, or you, the listener, may not agree with everything or anything that a certain guest says for that matter, my focus is not to decipher what is right or wrong. Rather, it's to gain a better understanding of why somebody thinks and acts the way that they do. And with this understanding, we will begin to make better sense of our own lives and the world around us. So join me as we open the books into these men's journeys and dissect the pages within. Brandon Schilling, welcome to Beyond the Cover.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Well, I want to start off by setting the stage for how you're here, because I think it's really admirable, and I also find it to be just really not by accident. So I had put out a Instagram story. It was around a week or couple weeks ago, asking for individuals that have went through a traumatic upbringing or through valley point, moments in their life that faced a lot of adversity. For those individuals to reach out if they were local to Scottsdale and also felt comfortable with sharing their experience. The reason why I want to do that is because I really utilize this platform. My goal is to bring the world closer together through sharing life experiences. I have only my life experience, right? So I do share my life experience. I've done that for the last, I've opened up my life to the public to watch me date and to see what happens to my mental health after I come off TV and I get hit with all these false accusations and how I navigate them. And so I've really put my life on public display, and I've watched how it's grown. It's made me more resilient, but it's also given people hope that hey, if he can get through that, I can as well. What I realized was that I can't impact everybody with my story. So how do we get other people to feel less alone and to feel supported and to feel that, they have a chance to make it through their lowest moments in life? And I realized, by getting other people to talk about it.
Right.
And so that's why I had put out that story, and you were one of the individuals that responded, which I was truthfully very shocked that you responded and with what you meant, said that you're like, hey, I'd be happy to talk about this today. It caught me off guard in a good way. In a way, honestly, it gave me hope that there's good people in this world, but there's also people that we're at a place in the world where vulnerability is not as taboo as what it once was. Yeah. Where we're now getting men to open up and talk about past life experiences that shape them for better, and you could say for worse. I think ultimately we get to a place where we go, okay, I see why I went through this, right? But to be vulnerable when no one's asking them to be.
Right.
And when you do that, when you open yourself up to everything, the
Yep.
good and the bad, the praise, but also the criticism. And
Mhm.
so, some of you today will be listening to this and not, watching on YouTube. But if you are watching on YouTube, you can see what I'm looking at, which is a very well put together man. I mean, the guy's
Thank
got $1
you.
million smile. He's wearing a cowboy hat. The man is I mean, he's a strong build, athletic guy. Like, you see me like from a look standpoint, and I got to hang out with you too. For people that don't know, it's like I actually first met you on New Year's in San
Mhm.
Diego,
Yeah.
and I meet you, and I'm like, this dude is wild. I mean, like you're fun, but man, high energy.
Yeah.
You had the cowboy hat on, and I was like, all right, this is a true cowboy. And man, you just like carried this energy with you all through the weekend, and it was just infectious. And we had a blast. I mean, we had
Yeah.
a great
We had a
time.
great time.
It was one for the books, and it was just like I was like, hey, after this, I'm probably not going to party for a while, and I don't need to because we really did it big with what was the DJ that we had?
That was Dead Mouse.
Dead Mouse. Yeah,
Yeah.
we listened to Dead Mouse play, major DJ, and had a table and had a time, man. Just great energy all around. And I genuinely thought that was going to be the end of it between with like, and not a good or bad thing, but I
Mhm.
thought like, hey, these guys were cool, but like, I don't know. I'm not really certain if there's going to be any, like, I might, if I bump into them and see them, I'm like, yo, what's going on, guys?
Yeah.
How's it going?
Right.
And I might, respond to them on, on IG, and we might
Mhm.
have, some banter here and there. Oh, like when you post a story or vice versa.
Right.
I didn't expect you to be like, yes, I want to, share my story.
Yeah.
And I had an upbringing that was challenging,
Yeah.
and, centered around a loved one that was, that is near and dear to me, but that really made,
Mhm.
that pushed me to, have to work through
Yeah.
an upbringing that's not typical, but
Yeah.
that was really, really hard. And so that's where we stand today. And I want to first off just say that I'm grateful and I'm proud of you as a man to come here and be vulnerable
Yeah.
as you will be,
Thank you.
and because you didn't have to.
Right.
I think again, what I want to highlight is you're a guy that doesn't need to do this, doesn't have to be vulnerable, and doesn't need to show the things that you struggle with or have struggled with.
Sure.
You could have that strong built up image and carry that,
Yeah.
and have a lot of people looking at you and saying, man, I wish I could be like him. Like,
Right.
he's like Superman.
Mhm.
He's got it all figured out, because you're also, you're a global business development manager in the aerospace industry.
Yep.
So what is it? First off, what does that entail? Like, I hear aerospace and I think rocket science. So I'm
Yeah.
like, but what specifically do you do in the aerospace industry?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've worked for 5 aerospace companies now, and I worked with NASA for a little bit. We were building a lunar lander to land on the South Pole of the moon to look for water, right? And I've also for the last year I was selling attack helicopters in the Middle East and Africa. And prior to that, I was working for another aerospace company running the Asia Pacific. So I was constantly out there. So, I'm not an engineer. Don't pretend to be an engineer. Didn't study engineering. But I work in one of the most engineering intensive industries, and I'm always on the business development side. So I'm the guy that wears the suit, and I go and negotiate the deal. You go through the T's and C's of the contract, redlining, and going back and forth and negotiating that, and trying to bring that deal home, right? And my previous role, when I was selling attack helicopters, it's I don't know if you've ever seen Iron Man, the original Iron Man.
Yeah. I love
When he
all
gets
Marvel
off the
movies.
plane and he shakes the hand, Commander, and we look forward to your weapons demonstration. That's exactly how it was. I mean, you had security details, you were going into foreign, and these are allies, of course, but you're going into foreign territory. You're going onto an Air Force base to shake the hands with the commander of, the Lebanese Air Force, or, the Egyptian Air Force, or Kenyan Army. And they're looking to buy some helicopters, man. And they need protection. They need assets. And you were the guy there to negotiate that deal. And so it's kind of my career in a very short period of time is just, and that's one thing too, looking back of where I came from, it's just wild to be, I self-reflect often. It's something I like to do, is to step back and be like, whoa, where are you at right now? Where were you? And to kind of step back and look at that every once in a while, to go, I just had a conversation the other day, someone back home, and they're just like, I still can't believe you do what you do for a living. And I'm like, I can't either. I
Yeah.
mean, realistically, I never thought in a million years I was going to be here, but
Yeah.
here we are, and I absolutely love it. It is my passion. Aviation, aerospace, defense, everything in between is just something since I was a kid,
Yeah.
have just grown to love, and so I am fortunate to be working in my passion, and I'm excited to see what the future holds in there.
So what can you tell us about the drones over New Jersey?
From what I know, it's Amazon and them testing that and trying to get that delivery system going. But outside of that,
Good answer.
I really don't. I'm gonna keep it PC. So
Yeah.
I don't really know.
Yeah, no, I'm just messing with you. Again, it's so that was like my first thought as I was taking a look into the stuff that you did, and I was like, oh, this guy has got security clearances, and this guy's he's doing something that's so unique. But it has, I mean, the things that you're selling too, I mean, they have a great impact. I mean, it's impacting people's lives,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot at stake, and this isn't, this is big dollars that you're dealing with. And you're able to have the confidence to walk in and to have these conversations and talk with these people that that aren't your average person. I mean, these are big time influential people. I have to imagine like there's times where, I mean, when you first started, did you have imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. I mean, I have to give a lot of credit to some of my mentors that I've had in my career, right? I mean, aerospace is an old industry. So Boeing's over a 100-year-old company.
Mm-hmm.
So as you can imagine, this isn't tech, right? Where a lot of people are young and hip and your CEO is probably only 10 years older than you. Oh, no, not in aerospace. I mean, everyone is significantly older than you. Mm-hmm. I came in for 2 companies now. I was the youngest salesperson in company history, 2 companies in a row. And so at 25 years old, there I am, and my coworkers are 20, 30, 40 years older than me. Mm-hmm. And as you can imagine, navigating that is tough because they're looking at you like, what the hell do you know? Like, what does this kid know? Right. What does this guy know?
Yeah.
And so it was interesting in that role when I was selling helicopters my boss, I got to tip my hat to him, is I was 2 weeks in, sends me to Lebanon by myself. Wow. Yeah. And he's like, I trust you. You're a professional. You can do it. And he's like, you have the resume. You know what you're doing. And I'm like, yeah, but I've never sold full helicopters before, and never, shaking the hands of the commander. I mean, guy is right under the president, right? Mm-hmm. Or the prime minister or who's ever in power in these countries. And so I'm like, holy cow, I really didn't know what I was getting into. So that first one was, but it just propels you so fast, right? And once you rip the Band-Aid off, it's smooth running after that. You do your first one and you do it alone. Yeah. You learn pretty quick, right? You're put to the fire.
It's a trial by fire.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, you come back and you're like, okay, now I know what to do next time and not what to do next time. Yeah. And so it definitely, you have to, like I, previously mentioned, there's a time and a place, right? And so there's a time to have fun, but then when it comes to business and you're heading into a big meeting, I mean, you go sit down with UAE and Sheikh Mohammed is telling their aviation, Sheikh Mohammed is one of the most powerful men in the world. And he's telling his, aviation advisor is, you do not leave until the deal is done. And, and it's just like, it's surreal. And it's just, you find yourself, just looking back, like you come back from a trip or you're even on the plane coming back going, what the heck just happened? Who did I just meet? Yeah. I mean, these are powerful people. And two, one thing I do want to state is because when I did get into that role, I mean, that's full weapon systems, right? We're dealing with weapon systems on these attack helicopters. I mean, it's the reality of war is they kill people, right? And so I was getting some flack from some people is like, how do you sleep at night knowing that, what you're selling is killing people? And it's like, well, first of all, I sleep all right. And, but second is, when these countries or even the United States, when they're looking at these assets, it's not always because they're planning to go to war. Mm-hmm. It's always because of the potential of war. You don't know what your neighbor is going to do. You don't know what that enemy is going to do one day. And if you're caught, with your pants down, what are you going to do? right? So it's always the potential, right?
So in a way, yeah, I mean, you're saying that they're purchasing these for protection, for defense.
Correct.
These aren't these are war machines. They, they can take lives,
Yep.
but a lot of times it's like, hey, I do agree. I mean, with that belief or with that framing, it's similar to like if somebody breaks into your house.
Correct.
I don't want to have a bat when they have a shotgun.
Right.
Right. And
Right.
so especially if you're in an area that
Right.
is dangerous,
Right.
and there's a lot of break-ins in other people's
Mhm.
homes, you'd almost be a fool to have a bat.
Correct.
It's like, I got to protect my family and my,
Right.
and my territory. And
Right.
so, that was something, for me where it's like, again, I don't want to get caught, because here's the thing, like, you might play by the rules, but someone else isn't.
Correct.
And so that's where, like, if they have the highest, the highest tech there is, helicopters and machinery, then you want to have the same thing, because
Correct.
if you're going, I don't want to get into a gunfight with a pistol when someone has an AR.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, I'm not a big gun, like I have guns, but I didn't like, and I grew up with them, but like, I didn't go, I'm not like a big shooter. I'll go shoot like every so often. I have friends that like to shoot guns, and, I'm not like a crazy, not, like crazy, like gun activist. I just like have a couple for self-defense. Cause I was caught in a situation where I potentially was, I was having an altercation with someone that I thought had a gun, and I didn't. And I was like, dude, it doesn't matter how big you are at this point, Clayton. Like if he's got something on his lap and like he pulls it on you, like it's over.
It's done.
And so I realized, I was like, I need to have this, and I'll never use it. I don't plan on using it. It's for defense. It's for protection.
Right.
But I went shooting one day, and I was shooting an AR, and for the first time, and I shot it, and I wasn't expecting how powerful it was and how accurate it was. I shot a target like bullseye through a scope 100 yards away.
Yeah.
And the amount of power when it hit, and I was like, dude, if I ever got caught in a situation where like someone walked into my house with an AR and I only had a pistol, like I am so screwed. Like you don't realize like how much of a deficit you're at. Yeah. So I share that story to say, like, while I don't work in your business, I understand the framing of like, this is for protection and defense. Correct. That's how I sleep at night. Yeah. If this person decides they want to turn this on somebody else, like, then they do. And I understand that's the nature of the beast, but but I also know that this can be used for good.
Yeah.
And,
exactly. I mean, it's like, if someone does break in, it's like, and you do pull the trigger on them, it's like, do you think I wanted to do that? No. I had to do it.
Yeah.
It's for my safety and my family's safety. And
it's me or them.
It's you or them. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, exactly. Like I said before, you just don't want to get caught with your pants down, or like you even said, bring a knife to a gunfight.
Yeah.
When you don't have to.
No, absolutely not. So I totally understand that. I'm glad, I'm happy you shared that, because again, like, perspective is everything.
Yeah.
And again, like, people, without taking the time to get to know you, I mean, again, you just sitting here, and as people will hear, as the more that you speak, like, you're not some cold-blooded killer that's just like, I sell these killer death machines, like, I love death. But you're like, no, I don't. Like, you're not that way. You don't present that way. You're just like, hey, like, this is something that I have, made it make sense for me, and it makes sense. And so I sleep well at night, you know, and if you don't like it, that's fine. Yeah. Nobody has to like, and that's where I've gotten to a place now where I'm like, you don't have to like me. Yeah. The people that I like, hopefully will like me. Yeah. And they do. Cause like, I can just be myself. And so it's easy to get those people to like me. Yeah. But those that hate me, like, there'll always be somebody. I can find always someone that's going to, have, and here's the thing though, it's fine. Like, we can have disagreements, but like, I have disagreements with my closest friends. Yeah. It's like, but let's just find common ground and let's try to understand one another. Yeah. You don't have to follow my life path to a T. Right. But if you can just, hear me out and see me for what I am, like, we're going to get along.
And that's one, it's funny you mentioned that, because for years I struggled with that. I really did struggle with that, because, the amount of people that I've heard that don't like me, or, and it's always funny, right? You find, you hear through the grapevine that, oh, such and such person doesn't like you. And you're like, who? You're like, who is this person? Yeah. And they're like, well, you met them. I'm like, okay. So I said maybe 10 words to them. Yeah. Do they have my phone number? Do they even know my last name? Yeah. But they don't like me. Yeah. And so I always fought that, because I always try to make everybody happy. And I always wanted to be that guy but I have always told people, and even in dating, or just, friends, is I kind of am a box of Kleenex, where it takes a while to get to the bottom, right? You got to pull each one layer by layer to get to the bottom of that box, right? So I do think, with some of my trauma in my life and my life story and the path that I've navigated, it takes a while to unpack that. So for some people, to see the true me and see my heart, it takes a while.
Yeah.
But those people that do take that time, and can recognize it maybe even early, and that's something I have worked on as well, is how can I minimize the size of that box, right? Can I
Mm.
show some true authenticity early, rather than, being that cold person and realizing like, no, 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 he's not who you think.
Yeah.
And actually one of my best friends, I've actually had a few friends say it, is, when they first saw me, for the first few months, one of my best friends I met at the gym, and he was like, "Ugh, I don't like that guy." And
Yeah.
it was because I switched from morning class to afternoon. I didn't know anyone, so I'd sit there quietly, hit my workout
Yeah.
and leave.
Yeah.
And I would talk to the trainers here and there because I knew them from the earlier classes, but I didn't know anyone, and no one really came up to talk to me. And
Yeah.
I'm not huge on just like walking up and be like, "Oh, hey," if someone knows someone, I'll usually, that's some type of icebreaker there, right?
Yeah.
But to just kind of walk up and just start a conversation, and I'm not huge on that.
Yeah.
And so when you're just sitting there all quietly, and kind of minding your business, he had this huge idea of me, and it was actually another member that was like, "No, he's actually really, really nice. You should talk to him."
Yeah.
And we hit it off, and we've been best friends ever since. So it's just kind of funny how that whole, trying to make people like you, and that's actually kind of really geared my mentality these days is, if you don't like me, you don't like me, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's probably because you probably don't truly know me.
Yeah.
I like to think I'm not a bad person. But it yeah, it just takes time to, unpackage me,
Yeah.
and because people see, they hear the job, they hear the career, they see my Instagram or anything like that, and they're like, "Oh, he's all self-centered and everything." I'm like, actually, it's completely opposite. I'm doing everything. I left my family behind. They're all still in Wisconsin. My mom is dying as we speak, of a disease, and because I want to one day go help my family. But if that's all you see in me, then you don't know me.
Yeah.
And that's just, it's unfortunate, but that's just how the world works, right? They get that initial judgment, and they're gonna probably coast with that for
Yeah.
the time being.
Yeah, and I think it's awesome to see like there's a healed version of you that where you're like, hey, I am what I am, and either you like me or you don't. I think it's interesting, the analogy you gave with the like being a tissue box.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because I get that feeling of, hey, I might have multiple tissues that you got to pull to finally get to the bottom. So maybe I should make it so there's less. And it's like, well, but maybe you can't because you're a complex human being,
right,
for the better.
right.
So like, why try to reduce it to just two tissues when
Right.
it's like, you really are this intricate human being where like
Right.
people are going to have to take the time
Yeah.
to like pull each layer out
Mhm.
and dissect it as it is because
Yeah.
it's what you've built.
Yeah.
You're not just like this, easily replicated, just here it is right here. I'm a 2-piece project.
Yeah.
Like, no, I have, I'm a puzzle piece. I'm 1,000 puzzle piece puzzle. Like you're going to have to really like take the time to like put this together. And at
Mhm.
first you put that first piece in the first few, you're like, I don't even know what the image this is building.
Yeah.
But then as you start putting more pieces into place, eventually you get that, oh, that's what this is.
Yeah.
And then, you appreciate that 1,000-piece puzzle because you're like, wow, like this took effort and took a lot of time to get to know, but now I see it for what it is.
Yeah.
And like, this is beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think that's, where it's like, don't reduce that down to that. I do understand though, the feeling of like, how can I get people to feel, who I am sooner so that I don't get these negative, thought, which are probably, again, like the guy at the gym might have could have been rooted in jealousy. He might have thought, I don't know what he was thinking, but he might have been thinking, oh, look at this good looking guy that doesn't want to talk to anybody. He probably thinks he's too good for everybody. That's why he's not talking. Right. That's probably what he said, and I do that to guys at the gym where like,
exactly.
I'll see guys that are my build in the gym and like my ego, my ego that goes, he's probably took steroids. He's probably a douchebag.
Yeah.
Like that's literally what my brain will say. And then I'll be like, hold up. You don't know.
Yep. You don't know.
Like you're not sure. Like I'll never forget. There was a slap in the face moment where it woke me up. I'm glad it happened. I see this guy in the gym and I'd seen him for probably 7 months.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of had the resting bitch face. Like he had a shaved head. He looked like a tool. He did. Like on paper, he looked the part. He was super jacked. Like probably like looked like he was 250 up top, but he had skinny legs. Yeah. And I remember for like 7 months, I'd see him in the gym and I'd look at him. I'm like, this dude it doesn't skips leg day every day. Like embarrassing. Like, and my brain would say that to make myself feel better. Like
Yeah.
because this guy was like upper body bigger than me, but I was
Yeah.
like, well, my upper body would look like that if I skipped leg day and did an extra 3 arm days.
Mhm.
So again, my ego was like, that's how I'm going to make sense of this.
Yeah.
And this guy probably is like so full of himself. And then one day, you know, I'd even in my head, I had created this, like, I created this voice that I thought he might've sounded like just like, what's up, bro?
Yeah.
Like that's the way that so I gave him a voice.
Yep.
And one day after like 7 months, he comes up to me and he's like, hey man, he's like, are you almost done here? Like, I don't want to interrupt, but if you're almost done with your set, like I was wanting to jump in. Is that cool? And I was like, yeah, bro, for sure. It's all good. And so first off, all of a sudden his voice didn't match what I had placed upon him.
Right.
And so then he's working out and then we're going back and forth and he's like, where are you from, man? I always see you in the gym. And I just want to say, dude, it's like, I really appreciate you just being here. Cause he's like, every day I show up, some days I'll be tired and I'll like look and I'm like, there he is. There he is again. He's like, so you really drive me to show up. So like, I really appreciate you, man. And all of a sudden my brain's like, what is going on? Like this guy's not a tool at all.
Yeah.
And so then I start talking with him and I'm like, where are you from? And we start having a conversation. And then all of a sudden he's like, yeah, he's like, you know, he's like, I come from this place, this place, and this place. He's like, man, the gym means everything to me. He's like, I got in a bad car accident like 4 years ago, and he's like really severely injured my legs. He's like, I actually like ended up having nerve damage. So he's like, I couldn't like even like my legs weren't functioning, you know, and I had back issues. And so he's like, I've been going to therapies, like, and unfortunately, like, you know, I can only really work out my upper body.
Yeah.
And I was just like,
dang. Yeah.
This whole time, I painted this whole image of this guy.
I know.
That was so false. And I felt like dog shit in that moment. I never told him what I thought of him personally. Cause I was like, well, there's no point to be like, hey, I thought you were like a dickhead.
Yeah.
It was like, no, like in that moment, I was like, Clayton, don't ever judge a book by its cover ever again. You have no idea until you have a conversation.
Yep.
And that's why I'm like, when there's someone that has a complex tissue box, like you better pull back every freaking layer before you cast a judgment upon this person.
Absolutely.
Before I say that this is a box of Kleenex and not the off brand, I better damn know, like, like analyze every facet of it to be like, this is a Kleenex box or this is the off brand version of it or something else. But until then, like, do not jump to conclusions because I couldn't have been further off from this guy. Yeah. And he was so super nice.
And it's funny how guys, like, we naturally do that. And it's actually something that I tell, you know, some, you know, girls and friends and whoever is guys and that was just like an image thing of you saw him at the gym, you saw your ego was coming into place. And how many times, you know, I've lived in Scottsdale now. I mean, I've been out here almost 10 years and, you know, you're out there and this is an American thing, by the way, very much so. But one of the first things that you do when you meet somebody at a bar or, you know, wherever you're at is, what do you do for a living? Yeah. And guys do that on purpose. Yeah. They're trying to size it, whether they admit it or not, you're getting sized up. Yeah. And so I've always, and when I first started my aerospace career and I dropped that bomb, no pun intended, but when I would, you know, people would, you know, people out here, a lot of people work in real estate, mortgage, you might get some cybersecurity here and there, but, you know, rarely do I ever meet somebody that works in aerospace and defense. Yeah. Right. And so when you're kind of going around, you're meeting this new friend group, whatever, and I've seen it happen. And, you know, these guys were working in finance and, there was a group of them and then they were like, oh, what do you do for a living? Cause I wait to be almost the last one because it happens a lot because it's a cool industry. So the guys that think it's cool and they're not threatened by it. Like I remember when I said what I did and one of the guys was like, and like walks away. Yeah. And never talked to that guy ever again. But these other guys became my friends. And it was just so interesting because I mean, guys, I think just naturally, I mean, planes, trains, and automobiles, right? When you were a kid, what were you playing with? You know, you're probably playing with trains and the planes and stuff like that. So, you know, now that I literally am doing that on, you know, the adult scale, I guess you could say, or in the, you know, in the real world, and you're making these machines, people just have a gajillion questions and they just want to ask, and I'm more than willing to tell them all about it. But it's always, it's interesting that you start painting that picture, and that ego comes into play. And you without even having a conversation, you start just building up that image. Yeah. And cause I've definitely been guilty of that, before.
Yeah, and I think again, it's just a protective mechanism. Like
Yeah.
we as men are very comparative. You know, we look at other men and we want to size them
Yeah.
up. And so, you know, I size up guys physically. If they're bigger than me, my brain would go steroids.
Yeah.
That's what my brain would do.
Right.
You know, because it wanted to justify that like there's no possible way that this person put in more work
Yeah.
than I did.
Right.
You know, because then I have to come to terms with the fact that I could do more.
Yeah.
You know, and now that's a me problem.
Yeah.
You know, if he took steroids, it's like, oh well, that's you know, that makes sense. Whatever.
Right.
He doesn't work harder than me, and now it's like, well, yeah, if I took steroids, I could do that. But if he did it the right way,
Right.
and out trained me, now I have to look at myself in the mirror and say, that person just put in more work than
Yeah.
you.
Yep.
So in order for you to get to their level, you have to put in more work,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
is not fun, but that's the nature. That's what it is. It's like,
Mhm.
that's where a lot of people struggle is they don't want to have to think that like, I am not where I want to be because I didn't put in as much work as that person.
Yeah.
Because that's really just at the end of the day saying you didn't do the work. It all falls on you. And a lot of people
Mhm.
don't want to take that responsibility upon their shoulders. There was something that you mentioned, and I want to dive deeper on it. You talked about, you know, being able to basically people please and to be, you know, get everyone to like you. And you said,
Mhm.
you know, that was something that you had struggled with.
Yeah.
And so you've got a better grasp on it these days. But where do you think that began? You know, where did that desire to make everybody around you like you stem from?
I always, you know, growing up as the athlete that was, you know, I was a 3-sport athlete, played college ball and, you know, baseball. And I was always just, um, you know, usually overlooked, especially after high school and things. And I've always kind of felt like in my life, I've always been the horse that nobody wants to bet on. And, you know, and sometimes I think it might be because, you know, I don't come from a big name. I don't come from, you know, I don't have that network, you know, that I was born into or the trust fund or anything like that. And so I've always just tried to navigating this new, you know, I grew up blue collar, man. I grew up blue collar. You know, we had a farm, we had horses, we were barrel racing. I grew up doing construction, working in a factory. One year I was doing landscape construction, and it's just what I knew, right? And that's what I did.
Mhm.
And so then when some things had happened when I was 18, and thank God that I think baseball took me to college because I don't think I probably would have gone to college. I probably would have gone the blue collar route.
Mhm.
I really wanted to be a diesel mechanic for some weird reason.
Okay.
And,
Yeah.
but, you know, college was actually beneficial for me. And seeing, you know, what more I could do, you know, in the business world. And it was interesting. I was just always trying to like kind of fit in, right? And so, you know, you weren't getting bet on, people weren't really believing in you. And I was just always seemed like I was just trying to fit in sometimes. And then, you know, through life, and I was in a 7-year relationship and that ended over 3 years ago. And even when that ended, and one thing I just have never been good with is drama.
Mhm.
And I don't think anybody likes drama. Some maybe, but
Well,
yeah,
I guess I could counter that by saying, well, that everyone that follows me on
yeah,
Instagram
right,
because
right,
they love watching the drama on reality
exactly.
television,
You know,
but it doesn't make people feel good.
yeah,
I mean, that I think we can all agree upon. It's like when people were watching me on TV and women were crying, like no one
right,
was like, yeah, make them
yeah,
cry more.
yeah,
Like, no, like it makes like, people don't like the
yeah,
drama. It doesn't make them feel good, but it makes them feel something.
something, yeah,
Yeah.
and that it. You know, when it came to, because I tried to fight it for the longest time, and when I had fallouts with certain friend groups that I'm no longer friends with, you know, years ago and things, and this person was saying this about you, and for the longest time I tried to defend myself,
Mhm.
and it just got to a point where I just was so against the drama, and what I really didn't want to get into was a he said she said,
Yeah.
and it led me to this now. I mean, whether it's a ex-girlfriend, an ex, you know, friend or friend or family member, is I now just kill it with kindness. I
Yeah.
kill it with kindness, and I kill it immediately by just saying, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I hope they're doing well, and I wish
Mhm.
them nothing but the best.
Yeah.
No matter what they have done to me, no matter what wrongs. I mean, I've had exes do me really wrong, and they say this and this about you. Okay. Well, I wish them nothing but the best. Hope they're doing well.
Yeah.
And because again, first off, I am one of the few people that have time for drama. I'm like, I'm sorry, I got bigger fish to fry than a he said, she said, back and forth that I just don't want to be a part of.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of started shifting it to, just accept it. If this person that's relaying this information to you, they're probably being two-faced to the person that they got the information from, because now they're telling you, and then they're going to run and tell them. And they're trying to fuel that fire. And so for me, just kill it as early as possible. If that's what they think of me, great. Tell them I wish them nothing but the best. Hope they're doing well.
Yeah.
The end. And I'm going to continue with whatever I was doing,
Yeah.
And just kill it with kindness. And that's been really tough because, there have been, people are going to say some nasty things about you, and no matter what you do, right? And so if you can just continue, it brings me peace. I think the most is that I'm not feeling that a little bit more. I'm not feeding into that energy.
Yeah.
And it's kind of it's kind of boring, right? I don't know if that would really sell on TV, because it's just like, you know what? Okay. Like, well, tell them, hope they're doing well.
Yeah.
The end.
Yeah.
And so, I guess it is kind of boring, but it gives me peace.
Yeah.
I didn't give them a reaction. I didn't give them a response. In terms of toxic relationships and things that people like to talk about nowadays, like I'm sorry, but I'm not going to feed into it. And if that's the energy you want to bring, then I'm just going to go the other way. Like I'm not one for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think it's an extremely mature mindset that shows that, you've built this emotional fortitude, and you've done the work to get to a place where you realize that, I'm not going to lay into this drama or feed into this, because really at the end of the day, I'm going to pick up that energy.
Yeah.
So if someone's saying something bad about me and I dwell upon it, and then I feel even, enticed enough or triggered enough to attack them back, like really, what's the net benefit? It's not going to be positive. I'm not going to, even if I tear them down and I win, I'm not going to feel good about being the bully. Right.
Yeah.
And so you realize that at the end of the day, like any type of negativity that I allow in or acknowledge becomes now a presence in my life that now impacts me. And so, you've gotten to a place where you're just like, hey, listen, like I just have turn the other cheek, brush the shoulder off and say, hey, I wish you nothing but the best, and just keep it moving. Like I'm not going to spend time on this. I'm going to just basically focus on what I can control, which, a lot of people struggle with. I think it's easy for people to play victim and to look at and say, woe is me, and say, well, this person's attacking me.
Yep.
But you have to ask yourself the question, why are they attacking you? What is it? And not that they should attack you, but for me growing up, and I was bullied a lot. It never right. But I will say this, like, I don't condone bullying, but I also feel that bullying turned me into what I am today, which I'm proud of.
Right.
And so it was essential for my growth. It was traumatic, but I needed it.
Yeah.
Because what it did was it showed me that there was a reason why I was being bullied. It's because what I didn't possess was self-love and self-confidence, and I was living in a place of fear and I was hiding my true self, and all culmination of those things. And so because I lacked self-love and self-confidence, this person that also lacked self-love and self-confidence that was bullying me, which I found that many of my bullies, didn't have self-love in their upbringing. Their parents were abusing them as extreme as abusing them physically. Yeah. And so they were, they lacked self-love and self-confidence and didn't feel good enough. So they wanted someone else to feel that way. Yeah. So they were going after the guy that was giving them an emotional response of like, I don't feel good enough. It's like, great, I can pull this person down. But had I had an abundance of self-love and self-confidence, I just wouldn't have responded. Right. They would have been picking on me, bullying me, and I would have, just been like, whatever, giving them no reaction. Yeah. And that's what they say psychologically. When someone's bullying you and when someone's, attacking you mentally, if you don't respond, they give up eventually. Correct. Because they realize like they're just screaming at someone that's just looking at them and saying, okay. And then eventually they feel like they're like, damn, I've just been screaming a lot and just expending all this energy. And for what? Yep. Like, I'm not getting anything in response. And so they end up feeling guilty, and they're like, well, I don't want to do it to this person. But when they get that person to fire off and they're like, you F you. And the person's like, no, fuck you. And all of a
Yep.
sudden they're like, yep.
Yep.
Like their ego's like, yeah, I got someone.
Yep. Yep.
Right. And then they get that energy going back and forth. And then
Mm-hmm.
now all of a sudden it's like, yes, they walk away
Yep.
and they're like, man, I hurt that person
Yeah.
bad. But they can only hurt you if you allow them
Yeah.
to, and so but it's getting to that place that I've gotten today. I had to go through a ton of negativity and a
Yeah.
lot of trauma, and I had to feel not good enough,
Yeah.
and that stemmed from the way that I perceive my life.
Yeah.
Similar to you mentioned, like, hey, you were always overlooked. Like I was not the star athlete,
Yeah.
like I would look at you and be like, yeah, you were probably the stud athlete from birth, like winning everything. That's what I would assume,
Mm-hmm.
and that you got everything that you wanted and you had an abundance. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's why you've carried this abundance into adulthood. But what
Yeah.
it sounds like is you're like, no, I was overlooked.
Yeah.
I lacked in certain areas.
Yeah.
And so I made it a mission to try to like build up something where I felt like I had an abundance.
Yep.
And so that on that note, like, how was your support system growing up? Like with the ones around you that,
Yeah.
a lot of people, if they say loved ones, the people that are there to support you and to help you grow.
Yeah.
How was that for you?
Well, that's a deep rooted question for me. So, I grew up in a broken home since I was one. And so my parents both remarried pretty quickly. So my stepmom, she's still in my life. That is my mom. That is my mother. She's an amazing woman. And so she's really been in my life since I was about 2. I think my parents got married when I was close to about 5-ish, right around that time frame. And they've been together, ever since. And my biological mom, I was very close with her growing up, for the longest time until really about 18.
Mm-hmm.
And it's when I found out kind of the truth about her. And my mom ended up remarrying as well. She married a great man. He was a great man. They were married for about 10 years or so. And it was about halfway through the marriage, it got rocky for them.
Mm-hmm.
And there was the custody battle, obviously, my dad versus my mom. And my dad was definitely losing that battle. I actually at one point hated my dad. I and my stepmom. I mean, I would cry, kick, scream. I did not like going over there, the weeks that I had to go by him. And some, to this story, it's a really interesting story. Is my mom ended up working, my dad's career law enforcement, worked even military police for the Air Force, and then got out and pretty much been a correctional officer. He's about to retire.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty much been his thing. Well,
Mm-hmm.
my mom actually for a while worked at a prison as well, just a different prison.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one day she had come home and she told me that, she obviously sat me down and was talking about divorce with my current stepdad, and that we were going to move to Florida. And it wasn't too out of the norm. I did have some aunt and uncles and some cousins that lived in Florida, so it wasn't too crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But she said that, this is going to be your new dad. His name is Daddy Donovan. And I would write this guy letters, and I would call him Daddy Donovan and say how much I wanted to see him and meet him and love him.
And what age are you at this point?
Maybe 5, 6, something around there. And I remember her showing me a picture of this guy, and it was a really tall black dude. He was shooting a jump shot in like a park. He was playing basketball. And I don't know why that picture, I will never forget it. But I remember seeing that picture. And my dad tells the story. I went over to my dad's about a week or so later, and he said we were driving, and he was driving, and my stepmom was in the passenger seat. My brother and I, we were so I have a stepbrother, same age. And so we're sitting in the back in the booster seats, and all of a sudden I just start bawling my eyes out, just crying. And my dad pulls over, and because they thought maybe my brother hit me. They couldn't. He's like, "What is going on?"
Mm-hmm.
So he calms me down, and just to get a little backstory, my dad is huge. My dad is a big man and just tatted, so ex-cop, military. He's a scary looking guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, he calms me down, and And he's, talk to me, son. And so I finally came to, and I said, Dad, I don't want to move to Florida. Again, my parents are in a custody battle. My dad's like, what? He's like, we ain't moving to fucking Florida. And I said, well, my mom said I have to move to Florida because that's where Daddy Donovan lives.
Mm.
And my dad looked at me and he's like, excuse me? I don't know who the hell Daddy Donovan is, but first things first, I am your dad and I am your father. And you're not moving to Florida. So fast forward, life goes on, but put a pin in that because life goes on, and I never moved to Florida, right? And my mom and my stepdad had kind of rekindled things for a while, and then later on got a divorce, and she then bounced guy to guy, house to house, and thank God, and this kind of answers your question, that I had my dad and my stepmom. And over the years, as I got a little bit older, I kind of started seeing the patterns of my mom and things that she wasn't just doing to me and my sisters and my family, but I just started kind of recognizing what was, kind of going on. Right. And fast forward to senior year of high school. And I went to a really small school. 90 people graduated in my high school. And the last week, right before I was about to walk across the stage, our vice principal walk around and hand us these vanilla folders with our transcripts in it, right? And he's handing them all out. And he hands me mine. And Clayton, I tell you what, mine was the size of the Holy Bible. And I'm looking at everybody else's and they're all thin. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, why is mine so big? And so I had study hall the next hour. So I sit down and I'm flipping through it, see my kindergarten report cards, kind of laughing at those, right? And I get to this one point and I notice my dad's lawyer was sending a questionnaire to my teachers every single year through elementary school. A very generic questionnaire. And my school left copies of it in my transcripts. I can tell you what, I was not supposed to see that. And so I'm reading it. It was a generic question like, what was Brandon's hygiene like the weeks he's with his mom? And my teacher was very unbiased, and I appreciate it. And it was, Brandon's hygiene was questionable. Some days he would show up to school the next day in the same outfit he wore the day before. How was Brandon's behavior the weeks that he's with his dad? Brandon was a perfect student. We could always tell the weeks he was with his dad. He was a perfect, obedient, not disruptive student. He was a perfect child. We always knew the weeks he was with his dad and the weeks he was with his mom. So, I'm reading through all of this, right? And I'm just soaking all this in, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So I get home late. My parents are laying in bed, getting ready, just watching a little TV, getting ready for bed. And I walk in there and I laid down the folder and I said, do you guys know what this is? And they're like, no. I said, well, these are my transcripts. Dad's like, okay. And I said, do you know what's in here? He's like, obviously your transcripts. I said, well, it's a little more than that. Your lawyer questionnaires, my school made copies and put that in there. He's like, really? I was like, yeah. And I kind of broke down and I was like, y'all, like, I'm sorry. My dad's like, what are you sorry for? I said, I hated you guys. I hated you. And I hated coming here because my dad would discipline me, and he wouldn't let me get away with, being a little asshole. And my dad just, he kind of looked at me and said, well, you have nothing to be sorry for. It's like, you were just a child. How were you supposed to know the things that your mom was putting into your head? And he's like, now do you understand why I fought so hard for you? And he was losing. He's like, and I wasn't telling you the truth about your mom. I didn't give into that. I didn't give into that energy. And I just had to play the long game, hoping one day you would realize the truth. And he goes, now there is something I need you to tell you about your mom. He goes, do you remember when you were a kid? And he goes, do you remember Daddy Donovan? And again, I'm 18 years old. And so I'm like, yeah. He's like, do you know who, and my dad says this guy's first, middle, and last name. Do you know who Donovan so-and-so was? I'm like, no, some guy that lived in Florida. He goes, Donovan was an inmate at the prison your mom was working at. And your mom was caught having an affair with a convict. And that moment, I just, as you can just imagine, all the feelings, right? I was writing letters to this man as a child. My mom was making me write letters to this man, calling him Daddy Donovan, and how much I wanted to see him and meet him, and said, I loved him. And, the biggest takeaway of all of this was what my dad kind of said after that. It was, and this also has shaped the way I view, kind of my relationships and things, is he told me, he said, Brandon, whatever you do, don't hate your mom. He goes, don't hate her. And I don't. And he said, because she is your mom. And she did give you life. And you have core memories, right? I would have never grown up on a farm with horses and barrel racing and all those fun things that you do on a farm as a kid. And all those memories. And he said, it's okay to still love her. Don't hate her. But you don't have to stand by and support or condone the things that she has done, the many things that she had done, and especially this one, to you and other peoples of the family and things like that. And I think that speaks more about my father than it does anything.
Mm-hmm.
And he could have dragged my mom's name through the mud. I could drag my mom's name through the mud. But I won't.
Yeah.
What does that accomplish for me?
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I tell a lot of people is, I had an ex that ended up sleeping with one of my friends when we broke up. I still see her out every once in a while. And I don't hate her. I think the biggest thing that I always tell people is it's too easy to hate people. Mm-hmm. It's too easy.
Yeah.
Especially in today's day and age, social media and things, it's too easy to hate people. And, obviously I have not, and this is the first time, obviously publicly, I have ever told that story and, of my mom and what she had done. And my mom continued just down a bad path, and I haven't seen her in close to 10 years. Mm-hmm. Very, very limited contact with her. I want to have a conversation with her. I want to talk to her about this, but this is a conversation that needs to be done face to face.
Yeah.
I don't want to write a letter. I don't want to send a message. I don't want to even a phone call. But she fled Wisconsin with her husband, who's evading child support somewhere in Arkansas. And so when I go back to Wisconsin, she's not there. And, I don't know if she knows. I don't know if she knows that I know. She might have an idea, mm-hmm. but, it's just, I'm going to go about it the same way. And, another thing that you had touched on, again, with it's too easy to hate people, is one thing that, and even morphed, and I'm a man of faith, I believe in God. And so you bring a little bit of that, and God talks about one of the worst things you can do is hate somebody. Mm-hmm. You said it before, is, turn your other cheek. God says if someone hits you in the cheek, turn your other one. And I wholeheartedly believe that. And another aspect of it, is that emotional intelligence side. Reading up on emotional intelligence and the 4 pillars that make up emotional intelligence. The first 2 are self-awareness and self-management. Next one is social awareness and relationship management. The first 2 are all about yourself. the one thing that I've learned is, Clayton, I can't control anybody that's sitting across from me, whether it's my girlfriend, whether it's a family or a boss, or I can't control another human being. I can't control you right now.
Yeah.
The only thing I can do is control myself and my emotions. So how am I going to go about that?
Yeah.
And lately, I caught some flack for it. Like how I think that mentality is crazy. It is, if you really think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because how many people just want to go and, like you said, fuck them, fuck you, and they want to get into drama and just dragging people's names. I'm sorry, like, I'm not the guy for that.
Yeah.
And it is kind of a crazy mentality, because it's in a world where it's too easy to hate somebody and to talk poorly about somebody, even if they do you wrong.
Yeah.
Why? What's the point? What benefit are you getting out of it? And I should hate my mom, but I don't. I have love for her. I want her nothing but the best. I mean, she went down an opioid addiction path, and loss of, when you're on opioids, you lose teeth. And I mean, I really wish that lady nothing but the best. And hopefully one day I'm able to be in a position to help her. But it's, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
What do you hope to accomplish with that face-to-face conversation? Do you wish more for closure, or do you wish more for the opening of a new chapter?
I think it's a mixture of both. I want the closure of that chapter and hopefully the start of a new chapter.
So
I really hope, again, leaning kind of on that emotional intelligence side, that she self-reflects, that she, admits and has some accountability there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know how it's going to go. I have a feeling I kind of know how it's going to go, just knowing the history, but I hope it's something that opens up, a new chapter.
Yeah.
I would like to see that. I mean, again, this is my mom. We are, when I find out this tidbit or that tidbit, or, about my mom, over the last 10 years or so, or, I mean, in what I'm doing in my career and where I've come from and how my family currently lives and how she lives, is just like, man, like, how are we cut from the same cloth?
Mm-hmm.
And I know she sees what I'm doing in my life. I mean, she has me on Facebook. And that's where she typically will message me here and there, Merry Christmas, or try to stir up a conversation. And I keep it very brief, very short. And I hope it brings a new chapter. It also helps take some weight off my shoulders, I think, a little bit, lets me just kind of go, whew. I've been trying to air that out for a while.
Yeah.
I don't think it's really, in a sense, holding me back. I mean, I've gone to therapy for it. I've talked about it. Therapists thought I had a great grasp and mentality on it, in terms of, I just don't hate the woman. I won't.
Yeah.
And Clayton, I think, like you've mentioned before, is, I've thought about it, is, where would I be if that didn't happen?
Yeah.
Would I be motivated? Would I be where I'm at? Probably not.
No.
You
wouldn't be what you are, for sure.
Yeah.
You'd be somewhere different.
Somewhere different.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd be sitting here right now.
Someone different too. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, again, it just kind of stems from, and some people have, obviously have it a lot worse, or, they've, people go through these traumatic experiences, and it's just how you process it and continue to move forward. You can, you don't have to understand it. I mean, that's one thing with my faith is I can ask the why question, or, why did you take this person from my life? Why did you put this person in my life, or whatever? Why did you allow this to happen to me? It's not for me to know.
Hmm.
There's probably a hidden lesson in there.
Yeah.
And, and so sometimes, I am, as crazy as it might sound, thankful, these days when you go through something like that and you're just like, you know what? I learned a valuable lesson.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so it's, again, I just think it has to do with how you process it and continue to move forward. And I'm thankful for it.
Yeah. I mean, what an incredible story. And what I gleaned from it was your dad taught you the power of forgiveness,
Mm-hmm.
but he also taught you the power of unconditional love.
Yeah.
Love your mother, because at the end of the day, she's still your mom.
Mm-hmm.
She's still your blood.
Yeah.
No matter what she's done, you should still love her, and she still loves you.
Right.
And man, I'm super excited knowing that conversation will happen. And I know that in order for it to happen, it requires both sides to show up
Mm-hmm.
face to face. But in a situation like that, I'm certain she might feel that, hey, he's probably going to blame me for this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, you're like, I just love you, Mom. I just want you in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I just want you to be happy. I just want to help.
Yeah.
No matter what you've been through, it doesn't bode well for me to hold resentment.
Right.
And it's why you are who you are today.
Right.
Why you turn the other cheek, why you don't, dwell upon negativity,
Mm-hmm.
because you had one of the greatest examples and reasons to hate somebody.
Yep.
And you ultimately made that choice not to.
Yeah.
And still want to mend that brokenness and put it together. And that says a lot about your character and about, the work that you've done. And so, man, Brandon, I just got so much respect. And I mean, again, this is the multiple layers. This is the complex tissue box, right? Because I'd say you pulled 5 or 6 tissues out today, and there's still, there's another 50 to 100 there, right, if not more. But your story is powerful because, growing up in a broken household, there's so many people listening to this or watching that are going to feel that
Mm-hmm.
it's not even, the things you've said they could relate to. And it's the way that you said them, that it, resonates and is going to help them be able to process and realize that you made a choice to not hate her.
Yeah.
You made a choice to continue to love her.
Mm-hmm.
And give her forgiveness, and tying that into your faith, and God forgives, and sent his son,
correct,
to save those who believe, and died on the cross for people's sins. It's like the ultimate sacrifice, giving your life for forgiveness, no matter what, for a murderer, for somebody that abandoned their family, for somebody that got into drugs, for somebody that carjacked somebody. It's like, God didn't discriminate.
Mm-hmm.
He sent his son, and it's like, forgiveness is given to all of those individuals.
Yep.
And so why can't you possess that same level of forgiveness? And
correct,
that's what you've chosen to say, hey, why not? If God can do it, I can do it.
Right.
And if my dad can do it, then I can do it too. And so, dude, this was just so incredibly powerful. And I'm so grateful that you shared this, and showed this vulnerable side that is going to help so many men and women out. But it also, it paints your true character. And I think the world needs to see that. So,
well, I appreciate it. Again, I appreciate you having me, being able to speak about this publicly, and you just having this platform, and I think, I was thinking about it even before I was coming today is, not enough men talk, man. And one thing that's just not talked about enough is 75% of all suicides are men. 79% in America.
I didn't realize the number was that skewed.
Yep. And people don't talk about it enough. And, you grow up and you're supposed to be that tough guy, and you got to just bottle it up and just push forward. Mm-hmm. You don't, talking to the men out there, anybody listening today is, It's okay to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's okay to go to therapy. I was terrified of therapy, man.
Yeah.
I was terrified.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's a sign of weakness, and it's not.
It's not. No.
It's actually, and that's, part of that whole, the forgiveness side is a side of strength.
Yeah.
And so, for any of the men out there that, are scared to go, or if you know somebody, and I'm actually at the point in my life where I think every single person should at least one time try therapy.
I agree with you. I just did proactive therapy.
Yeah.
I went, and I had a problem, but I didn't at the time. I said, I'll just go for this and see if I can uncover something. And I did.
Yeah.
But I didn't need it at that moment. I was like, but why not?
Yeah.
Go get ahead of it. Like, see if there is something there that you can work on. And sure enough, I had this massive breakthrough. I did EMDR, which is a certain type of therapy. And on the 7th session, I had this massive breakthrough that completely shifted my perspective on life.
Yeah.
So I'm right there with you. And the beauty of therapy is they have these HIPAA laws where they can't disclose what you're sharing. And they also even have these client-patient relationships where like they can't acknowledge you out in public.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're concerned that they're gonna be like, hey, how you doing? And someone's like, well, who's that? And you go like, oh, nobody. And it's like, oh, it's my therapist. And people are like, oh, you go to therapy. It's like, no, like there's so many protections in place to hide it. And I tell men like, go, and if you want to hide it.
Yeah.
Nobody has to know.
Yep.
They won't know.
Right.
That you'll walk in, you'll have your session, you'll walk out, and you can decide not to share anything you said to anybody else other than that therapist. And the beauty of it is if that therapist ever shared with anybody, even their spouse, they would get sued to oblivion. These therapists know that they can't let this out.
Correct.
And so your secret's safe with them. No matter what you say, like it is between you and that person and those walls.
And it's different too, because, if you're going to a friend, there's that bias, right? So, that they have, that your friend's going to have. Yeah. You go to a therapist, they're unbiased, man. Yeah. They don't know you. You don't know them. Yeah. And, so what benefit, of either, if you ask for criticism and they give it to you, what benefit really does it have for that person, but to, obviously help you? Yeah. I've always been a big advocate for it. I wasn't always, actually. I mean, as of now I am. Yeah. And so it's, that we need to get that number down, 79% in America, 75 globally, we as men, and I think it kind of starts with you and I and other men, is to just talk to one another. And, one small gesture that, I always make a point to, and when seeing an old friend or someone I haven't seen in a while, is, you just kind of grab them on the shoulder and kind of look at them and just say, are you doing okay? Yeah. Yeah. Just the question. Something as simple as that question. Yeah. Are you doing okay?
Like, we ask people all the time, like, how are you doing? I'm good. No, really, how are you? Like I've found that no, really, how are you? Yeah. Like just kind of like gets people to be like, well, that wasn't a good enough answer. Yeah. But then all of a sudden they feel in that moment, you're giving them permission to give you more. Yep. And I've found that that's broken people down.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a simple question of like, really? Yeah. And that's it. I mean, if you don't have to have, I think that's the thing too. People are afraid to have the conversations because like, what if I can't say the right things? Right. It's like, you don't realize that honestly, if you just ask, really, how are you? And they let it all out. If you don't say another word, you've done enough. Yep. Because they just need someone to be there for them and listen and let it out. And at the end, you could just, even if they say something so complex, it's like, I really appreciate you sharing that with me. And like, that might be enough. And you give them a hug or you fist pound or whatever. And it's like, that's enough. They're going to be like, holy hell, like I needed to get that out. Thank you so much. Yeah. You don't have to be a therapist to have these conversations. You don't have to be so emotionally mature to like dive deep, because you're not giving people, a lot of times people just want to feel seen and heard, and they're not looking for you to give them advice. They just want to be heard. Yeah. And so that to do that, they're like, they just need to say something, and they need to know that someone is actually listening to them. Yep. And that's what you say, no, really, how are you? And that's it. You open the floodgates, and like, you've likely just let somebody address something that they've been suppressing, that's been building up, that they're almost at their wits' end. It's like, you now just allow them to let it all out. And afterwards they're like, it's not the end of the world. Yeah. Like I now have somebody I can share with, and they'll probably share with you beyond that point. Right. And before you know it, it's like they realize, wait, sharing with people doesn't all of a sudden, close me off to them or like make me seem less than. In fact,
Yeah.
this person's telling me like they're proud of me and how courageous and strong I am for sharing. And
Right.
that's what I told myself when I went to therapy. I said, actually, me sharing, me being public, talking about my insecurities and weaknesses publicly, I said, actually, how much like that talk takes a tremendous amount of strength.
Mm-hmm.
I'm putting out my weaknesses and insecurities out there for my enemies
Yeah.
to know what I would struggle with.
Yeah.
That takes even more
Yep.
strength than hiding it.
Yep.
Because now I'm saying, hey, here's my weak points. So if you want to attack them, like you can, but like I need to get this out. And what I realized though is like once I put it out there and they attacked me, they came around and they attacked
Mm-hmm.
me. And I don't tell everyone to go out there and tell the world about their struggles. But what I realized is when I put it out there and they came back and they attacked me with the same thing that I told them I struggle with, I was like, yeah, but I know what you're doing.
Yeah.
See, at that point, I had the emotional maturity or the awareness to be like, you're just saying this. You don't believe it. You're just saying it to try to dig at me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just pathetic.
Yeah.
And that just shows that you're weak.
Right.
Because like you're trying to kick a man when he's down, but really like if I didn't tell you about this, you wouldn't be aware of it. Now I can just see your true colors.
Right.
You just want someone to hurt because you're hurting.
Yeah.
And that's the reality is like the pain really starts with you. It's not me.
Yeah.
And what you said all the way back at the beginning, you said these people don't know my last name. They don't have my phone number. And that's the truth. It's like, these people don't hate you.
Yeah.
They hate what you remind them of.
Yeah.
That's the kicker.
Exactly.
And when I realized that, I was like, you don't actually hate me because you don't know me. All of you people that judge me online, you don't know me.
Right.
Therefore, like you hate what I remind you of. I'm your trauma. I'm the pain that's causing you to have to face yourself in the mirror and say, why do I really hate this guy? If you asked, if you don't ask, you'll just go ahead and keep pointing the finger and say Clayton Eckert's the worst bachelor ever and he sucks as a human being.
Right.
Okay, go ahead and keep lying to yourself.
Right.
Because the reality is I don't.
Right.
I believe that at least. You can choose to believe that, but the reality is I'm not a monster.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not what you think I am.
Yep.
I'm not the guy that you're projecting your emotions onto me and saying, well, he reminds me of my ex-boyfriend. I'm not your ex-boyfriend.
Right.
I'm a very intricate human being that has I'm very, very, I guarantee if you put me side by side with that guy, I have nothing in common with him.
Correct.
Or maybe I have some things in common with him. But the reality is I won't have everything in common with him.
Right.
And so, again, what requires you to be able to let go of the pain that you have towards me is to reflect within and say, why am I projecting something onto Clayton that is caused by Derek, my boyfriend. Like, why am I drawing this parallel? Where is this really stemming from? The reality is it's stemming from something you have not addressed and healed.
Yep.
So the second I got to that place, I realized that I'm like, I feel for these people.
Yeah.
I really do genuinely feel bad for you.
Yep.
I don't need to comment back on Instagram and talk about the way that you look or try to hit you equally as hard to tear you down. Cause I know how to, because I have more self-love than you likely do. Right. So likely if I wanted to play dirty, I could wreck you before you wreck me.
Right.
But I'm not going to, because the reality is like, it only hurts me to be a shitty human being.
Yep. Yeah. There's no benefit out of it.
There's no benefit. So, we just turn the other cheek and move on and continue to exude positivity and just realize that like that'll come back and what's not meant for us gets repelled anyway. So.
Yeah, exactly. And some of my exes and stuff like that too is like, listen, I don't know why they did this to me. It's not for me. Yeah. That's between them and God. Mm-hmm. Whether you want to call it karma or whatever happens to them is, the only thing I can sit here and say is wish you nothing but the best.
The best, man.
And whatever happens to you. It's just I'm not going to be a part of it anymore. And I'm going to take my crayons and go home.
And that's what we do, man.
That's right.
Brandon, for those that want to connect with you and maybe continue the conversation even, what's the best way for people to do so?
Yeah. Instagram is definitely a big one. I am private on there just because sometimes with the job and what I post, like some things on my story. But that's a big one. Instagram. LinkedIn, of course, I'm gonna throw that out there. I'm big on LinkedIn too. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, everything out there, but definitely Instagram is probably the biggest one. But don't ever hesitate. If it's just one person that, needs to reach out, I'm always someone that, will listen and talk and hopefully help guide in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, Brandon, you're very admirable, and thank you so much for sharing your story today.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me.